Welcome everybody, thanks for tuning in for another episode from the 2023 EMTB Shootout, presented by Schwalbe Tires and Fox Racing. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Giant Trance X Advanced E+0. This is the only bike in our shootout running a Yamaha drive unit, which had some really unique characteristics out on the trail. It is a 140-150 mil 29er that we would say is firmly in the trail category. So stay tuned. Today we're going to talk about the Giant. So Giant is offering the Trance E line in bikes priced from $7,000 up to $15,000. This one here retails for $9,500. Comes with the Fox electronically controlled suspension, Shimano XT drivetrain, and a host of other impressive features. It also has a Yamaha drive unit, as we mentioned, the Sync Drive Pro with a 625 watt-hour battery. Before we get into ride impressions, Robert, why don't you talk to us about the geometry on the Trance E?
Yeah, so as we've mentioned already, firmly in the trail category with some numbers that definitely point towards favouring uphill performance rather than necessarily the most aggressive downhill ride. It's got a 482mm reach for the size large that we tested with a 621mm stack, 473mm chain stays, which are the longest on the test by a good margin, 1268 wheelbase, 30mm bottom bracket drop. Yeah, it's certainly tailored towards the climbing performance rather than, I guess the most aggressive downhill ride.
Yeah, the chainstays are definitely on the long side. Head tube angle is steepest of the group for sure. And it seems like trail bikes these days are almost splitting up, right? Like you can have a 140 bike like the Score or the Marin, which are the new modern aggressive trail bike, and then you have your kind of general, more traditional XC focused trail bike, which I think this bike is, and that's not a bad thing because there are definitely riders who aren't trying to go out and be super gnarly, extreme, influencers doing wild tricks. They want to go cover big miles, they want to do big climbs, they want to be comfortable doing so. So let's get into drivetrain performance, the drive unit performance first off with this Yamaha, being that it is unique. Nick, what do you think about the power delivery?
This is the second Yamaha motor I've been on. First was the actual Yamaha bike,
right.
And it feels very similar power-wise. It's really, it delivers a lot of torque up front and really gives you all the torque as you take off, but it really wants you to put some of the work in, right? It definitely feels a little bit less like you're just soft pedaling like a Shimano system, and it feels more like you're putting a little more work into it, but it rewards you pretty well as it has consistent power delivery through the range of the motor and really feels fairly natural as you're pedaling.
I thought it was particularly impressive when you're down to low cadences, especially if you get all the way up into the easiest gear at the back. On the steepest pitches, you can be down to 40, 50 RPM cadence, super low, and it'll still give you the grunt.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an 85 Newton meter motor, something that we all really like. I think, maybe I'm speaking wrong, right? I think there were a couple riders who didn't love, but the three of us, right, all enjoyed how sleek and stealthy this controller was. It's, not obtrusive. It's very small. It's easy to hit. I think you thought at first you would be bumping it accidentally, but that didn't happen.
Not at all.
I really liked it. The little display is nothing more than kind of different color indicators for battery range and power. There's no digital, numbers or any other information beyond that. Just kind of some hash marks or tick marks that
it's
you
all
can
you
take a
need.
look at. Well, I mean,
you can
need is,
as well,
need
Yeah,
is
you
an
can-
interesting word. Yes. Absolutely. The app is an important part, especially with the, electronically controlled suspension. You can customize and tune, the platform or the sensitivity, turning it on and off, etc. So it's definitely a techie person's bike in this build. I'm personally not a huge fan of electronic suspension, so I would opt for a build that doesn't feature the electronic suspension. But nevertheless, people who are racing, wanting that efficiency and speed, and want every little ounce of like energy saved and speed they can get, it'll have an advantage for sure. I guess so. Speaking of speed, energy, climbing, the long chain stays, low stack height lend itself to that type of riding. Robert, talk a little on that.
Yeah, so without a doubt, in the test, this is a bike that will get you up the steepest pitches without having to, really ride the bars and actively push that front wheel down. And it's really impressive how steep a grade you can get up when you combine that geometry with the motor, which still keeps on giving you power all the way down to low cadences, as I said. It's awesome for that. And then when you get onto the more undulating sort of terrain as well, with the live valve giving you support, it makes it feel really energetic and fast.
It's a sprightly platform, especially when that shock engages, and it gives you a lot to push off of. Like you said, the long chain stays and the low stack can work against it on the steepest descents or really tight, quick corners. But again, that I think maybe isn't the ideal home for this bike or the ideal consumer for this bike. General trail riders, just getting out, covering miles, people that like to climb, that's going to be the sweet spot for this bike, I believe.
For a super fast, like flowing single track,
it does well.
It's awesome.
It's a planted bike, and even it's got a firmer suspension platform, and so it really gives you a lot of feedback, and you can push off really nicely in the corners. It is a very fun bike. I mean, it was fun to send off some of those rocks and get into corners, but I just think that the low stack and the long rear end could be a detriment to some of like the more aggressive newer schooler riders. But I guess you could run a higher rise bar on there. It's not going to change the length of the rear end, but nevertheless, it's a pretty good bike all around. Definitely more, I think, for that XC all around trail rider. Any major cons or pros from you?
I mean, you hit the majority of them. It doesn't track into super tight corners, just because of the way the geometry is. But that lends itself to being stable at speed, at open, flowy trails. It climbs. It's the best climber on test, for me, and I think that's really who it lends to. Like you're saying, I think that's for the right rider, this is a very good bike.
Okay. Any standouts, good or bad for you?
No, for sure. That pretty much covers it. Okay. I do like the live valve for this style of bike. Okay. It wouldn't be the style of bike that necessarily I'd be buying, but for what it is, it
does
works
it
really well.
I would agree there, for sure. I like the charge port cover.
That was nice.
The power of the Yamaha, you kind of touched on, it's similar to like the Rocky Mountain. It gives what it gets. So if you want to push, it'll give you some juice for sure. One thing that kind of bothered me, which is probably somewhat limited to our experience and maybe not the general trail rider, is we do lots of riding and stopping and waiting, right? Whether it's for the camera guys to set up or another rider to come catch up so we can turn around and repeat. But when you're sitting there and you've got a foot on the pedal and you're just kind of waiting, that crank arm just starts jittering and surging. And it may sound like not a big deal, but if you think about how often you do that while you're out riding, it's a lot, right? Like at least for us when we are stopping regularly, and it's I thought just a little bit annoying and could use a little refinement, I guess, because the Shimano and the Bosch don't really do that so much. The Rocky Mountain does do that, and it seems like the Yamaha as well. So
there was a couple of times that I was doing that, stop with my foot on it, and maybe I put a little bit too much weight through it, and it'd start taking off. And when you're on the side of a flat bit of trail, not a problem, but if you're on the edge of a cliff or something,
right, yeah. So minor stuff, but nonetheless stuff I think it's worth talking about, because hopefully that could be adjusted for some. So thank you guys very much for watching. Again, this is part of a much larger shootout series, so check out all the other reviews and make sure you stay tuned for the grand finale where we put all 13 bikes together in a head-to-head round table discussion. Please subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more videos. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the trails.